Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the show this afternoon. You guys, unless you've not been listening, there's a disease out there in Africa, in the Congo, the deepest, darkest parts of Africa, and it's called Ebola. And it simulates why this disease is so unusual is it simulates the flu in the first stages of it. Very contagious. You can catch it if you just touch something somebody else has touched. It's in all bodily fluids, and thank goodness it's not airborne. That means you can't catch it out of the air. So if somebody's 50 feet away, like with the flu, somebody sneezes, they can be 50 feet away from you and you'll come down with it because it's airborne. It goes in the tiny droplets in the air, is enough to pass it on from person to person with the flu. But Ebola is not airborne, thank goodness. You have to actually touch something that has bodily fluids in it, and then touch it to yourself to catch it. So it's not airborne. But even though it's not airborne, it's still very contagious. They've got a number of cases in a big city called in the Congo called Goma. And they have an international airport there, and if it starts to get loose in Goma, this situation could be very desperate indeed. Now, in other news, the United States, they've pulled out of a treaty that was in place, I think, since 1987. Anyway, from the 1980s, a treaty. It's a nuclear arms treaty, and this allows them, now that they've pulled out of the treaty, they're allowed to put in new weapon systems anywhere they want in the world. Now Russia's awfully angry about this because the whole thing is they want to put a weapon system in Japan, and they've already placed these weapon systems in Romania and in Poland already. Made Russia very mad. Now what this weapon system basically is, it looks like a giant rectangular box. It stands like 4 stories tall. It's this just giant box looking thing. And what it does, it's called a vertical launcher. They put the missile inside this thing, this unit, and it pushes it fires off some sort of a discharge in it, and pushes the missile up into the air about 40 or 50 feet, and then the missile takes off on its own. It's called a vertical launcher, is what it's called. And they're putting a number of these vertical launchers, I guess they're planning on putting them right away. They're going to get right over there and put them in Japan. Russia's awfully angry about it. Russia says that we'll put our own systems in that are the equivalent of these new vertical launchers. And so basically what's happened is now that this treaty is gone, the arms race is back on. Now, I am very against them taking this treaty down. I don't like it because it's going to increase the arms race, and it's going to increase the amount of weapons both sides have aimed at one another. They've already got overkill. This is what mutual assured destruction was all about, which we had in place for many, many, many years. And the world has stayed relatively calm and peaceful because we have these treaties in place. Tell you what I'm hoping. I'm hoping that they'll get that treaty back in place as soon as they can, because it's very important. Now, we have the Strait of Hormuz near Iran. It's a choke point. What's called a choke point. So ships have to come through that tiny little strait right there, and they're very vulnerable, as they come through that strait. Iran's captured 3 ships already, and they've seized 3 ships already that's coming through that strait. Iran is mad as a hornet's nest. The United States is upset too. Great Britain is in there, the United Kingdom, with ships of their own. It's a situation that could explode into violence very quickly, but it hasn't happened yet. Now we're in a waiting game, and we're hoping that nothing's going to happen, that it'll stay the way it is, and we'll be able to maintain a status quo without war breaking out in that area. Let's hope that war does not break out in that area. My tendency is to think that we might be able to get through this without having a war there. And I'm hoping that's what's going to happen. We're going to have to wait and see. Other trouble areas in the world, one of the reasons why I think they're putting those missile launchers in is because of the situation that's going on in Ukraine. You know, there's the potential there for problems to arise with possibly if things go wrong between the Ukrainian government and Russia, that Russia has the potential. I'm not saying they're going to, I just say they have the potential to move into Ukraine. They have troops stationed there. Those troops have practiced already in a mock battle against NATO. Last year in 2018, they practiced already. The troops, it was called the exercise was called Zapad 18, which was Zapad 2018, and they practiced. It was a mock war where Russia, in the mock war, Russia was fighting against NATO and NATO against Russia. And so they've already practiced for this. And I think this made NATO very nervous. So now what NATO's doing is they're intensifying their efforts to build up and support the regions around Ukraine, which would be Romania and Poland. And also they're worried about Kim Jong-un and his intensifying efforts to build new nuclear weapons in the East Pacific area there near Japan. Japan's very worried, and that's why they're putting in these new missile systems. So the world is a mess right now, and how much longer it can go before we have an enormous financial catastrophe, we're going to have to wait and see. But listen, stay tuned, you guys. I'm going to keep reporting to you. And you guys have a nice afternoon. Bye-bye for now.